I've yet to meet anyone with an Aquarius moon who does not feel the internal contradiction, basically, between needing feedback and ultimately some form of validation from others, from groups, from family members, from friends, but then equally has this reigning need, this very strong need to do things in their own way, and to do things no matter how quirky, unorthodox, different to their particular group that they associate with. And that can be your culture, this is you, your culture, society as you know it, the friends that you choose to be around, but still in some way feel like you do things different too. Whatever it is that you identify with on some level, there is that mixed need for doing own thing and doing one's own thing one's own way, and also not moving too far out from the group, that there is still that need to be plugged in to get feedback. And I feel like there's one or two things that this process of feedback serves. There's one where it's almost staying grounded. So Aquarius as a sign being co-ruled by the energies of Saturn and Uranus, tradition and newness, what has worked before, what's potentially going to work in the future, what's super grounded, what's completely and totally novel. So having these two energies operating in this somewhat paradoxical way leaves the person ultimately feeling like an eternal contradiction, and that can also, so what I was saying before about the one way that this can manifest is having that polarity in the point of getting feedback from others. And then also the other side of that is to get feedback from others to do things like if there's feedback and you're coming across maybe too normal, or things are too accepted and too regular, then with that feedback the Uranian part might have a way of piping up and wanting to mix things up, purely because that's not the feedback that an Aquarian moon wants. Like, Aquarian moon doesn't want to feel like they're fitting in just fine and being like everybody else, even if that's on some level the case. And then also there's also this sense of rejection and sense of there might be a part of you or who you know with this that wants to do things completely uniquely and very you, but there's always going to be this sense of still wanting to be accepted for doing that, rather than just effort, like I'm going to do my own thing and I don't care. There might be periods of that and there might be a belief in that, but there is definitely still a part that wants to be accepted and fit into some sort of group or society or some framework where you're contributing and being connected on some level as well. So that's that particular dynamic and seeming contradiction. And I like it because that is the world we live in today, we are in now. I believe we have moved in for another just over 2000 or 2100 year cycle, that being the age of Aquarius. And that's why we're seeing so much contradiction and so many things that are really cool and that are connecting us a lot, but then where there's this equal disconnect and, improving acceptance, but then also increasing prejudice and creating other issues at the same time. So this contradiction is something that's going to work itself out for the next while, and I've got no idea how that's going to. I can only guess and intuit maybe how this will evolve, but this dynamic is something that the Aquarian moon individual feels like deep within their soul, that they already know this. They already know what it's like to be part of groups and connected, but then also feeling isolated in some way. And dare I say, there's childhood reasons for this, or particularly past lives, and past lives being your own past life, or parental ancestral past lives. I always discuss that it could be any number of these, because it's still anything prior that has led to your psychology and your emotional wiring being what it is today. there's something there where groups are a focus, and just being part of something that is either very insular or maybe very unique in its own right, and then within that group always feeling like you're an individual, you want to be an individual within that group, and then once you move outside of that group, there's always that you don't quite fit in. And I think a big part of you doesn't truly want to, and for certain reasons. And there's equally that need in some other cases, depending how strong Saturn is in your chart, where fitting in and being heard and being you is equally as desired. If you can surround yourself with friends of all different traits and interests, and like an eclectic group of friends, having an eclectic group of friends, a number of different interests, anything that can keep your synapses pretty much firing a lot of the time, anything that can spark your interest through novelty, anything like similar to a Gemini moon in a way. There's definitely that need for movement and for stimulation and being connected, but I feel with the Aquarian moon there's more of that need for things to be having some sort of strong sort of purpose, or having some underlying responsibility, and also really wanting to bring in something completely novel that's not accepted. Whereas I feel sometimes Gemini energy, it's very changeable, needs stimulation, but lots of the time it can work within the bounds of dare I say, the mainstream. Not always the case, there's other chart factors, but that's how I see the difference there. Aquarian energy as well is that which is very overseeing. So having that as part of your emotional makeup it creates a sort of detachment sometimes between oneself and one's feelings. What's, the feelings can be rationalized and intellectualized quite a lot. Also, that can manifest as being there to work through in almost a detached way with other people's feelings and other people's stuff, but remaining somewhat cool, calm, and collected, and maybe feeling on more of a mental plane. So still definitely getting triggered and can feel things, but there's a space there. There's a space for listening and for healing. And I think that's why Aquarian moon people can be very good where some sort of both diplomacy and some sort of like a balanced point of view, and when people really need to be heard, an Aquarian moon is very good at, once there's some certain amount of self-acceptance as well, there's the ability to really hear others and not get too swept up in that. And sometimes living emotionally vicariously through others, so through the mental connection, feeling things in that way, if that makes sense. A big thing as well is self-worth around what you value and what you find worthy and worthwhile, and trusting that that's not always going to be something that everyone else or people that you love will agree with. And this is, you can say this for anyone, but I find particularly true for these positions, is your personal interests are going to seem sometimes quite different, and leave people wondering why you value whatever it is or whatever kind of people. And that's okay. They don't need to value it. They don't even need to let you value those things. There's something that comes with going ahead and allowing yourself to follow whatever it is, and trusting that as long as you're comfortable with it and you're not doing it just to be different or rebellious, if that's really who you are, in time people come around. and sometimes there can be some distance involved and some removal away from what you know and what people have expected of you, but that is at your core to do this, and to dishonor that is going to leave you in a loop of always seeking validation or always feeling like you're just not quite doing what's meant for you, and that can never really lead to a positive outcome in terms of emotional fulfillment and spiritual growth. This ability also to go ahead and do your own thing and be yourself, and again, not having to be overly assertive, but doing it, can allow others to be inspired and to be confident within their self and their interests. Creating more personal love is something that might come in time once you feel like you've allowed yourself to be true to yourself, so you can feel more connected to you and therefore more connected to others. And that detachment that is so commonly associated with Aquarius energy can alter somewhat once you've given yourself permission to really feel and understand yourself. So yeah, whether this is in a connections, being in like an internet online setting, can be a lot of freedom in that. Obviously not the one-on-one closeness, but it's quite often that there's some sort of closeness can develop with distance, so people that live overseas or people that are far away in some way online. Long distance relationships can be handled quite well here. Emotional dramas are something I'd suggest as something to be mindful about, because sometimes if there is a lot of emotional drama and stuff coming up, that can sometimes be a signal that you're trying to create some distance and push people away, and to see that that's what it is. And that's maybe not really who you are, but it might just be you're not comfortable in the current circumstance, so to be mindful of that. And yeah, any other questions? I feel for all my different discussions on planetary placements, I will do second part 2 and maybe even a summarized version. Just be strong and do you and love you, and then connection with others will come so much easier. And that's what I think what you really crave: connection to yourself and with others, and a respectful connection. Thank you. See you soon.